You know the feeling. You've locked the front door, you're sure you've locked the front door, but you have to go back just to be certain. Well, it's that kind of constant checking that's just one of the behaviours that can devastate the lives of sufferers of severe obsessive-compulsive disorder. It's known as the secret illness because its victims can go to extreme lengths just to hide the symptoms. But tonight we find out what it's like having to live with OCD.
It's always there. It's always hanging over a situation. You know, it's always in the background there. It's always waiting to rain on you.
The OCD has got you in the stomach like that and it's saying, today I'm not going to let go.
If people in Wales cannot access the treatment that will free them of that, then that's wrong.
Right, exhaust removal. If this exhaust is put on in the wrong place, there's only one bolt holding that on.
Dean Pesticcio, who lives in Cardiff, is a mechanic who takes his work very seriously. He's obsessed with safety.
If you go into a corner and that thing's hanging off, or if you lose it and hits the motorbike or car behind you, a lot of responsibility.
Finishing this simple job will take Dean a very long time. He has to check his work again and again to make sure it's safe.
Here, I'm not just thinking about turning a nut. I've got a train wreck behind it. A train wreck that's not letting me just do it and walk away. It'll be calling me back, saying, did you do it tight enough? Did you do it too tight? Because that was quite, some mechanics now watching this, you've overdone that. And some people say, there's nothing wrong with it, it'll be fine. But for me, I'm going to question that. And the reason why I'll question it, because there's a consequence. And the consequence is, that can hurt someone. That's just one bolt on one bike.
This father of three has battled severe OCD for 20 years, but it's been with him since he was a teenager.
I've been on medication since I was 21. Without the medication, you'd probably be talking to me through my bedroom window. So I wouldn't be able to get out of the house and get on. But without the medication, I couldn't be a father, a husband, or of any use to anybody.
For Dean's parents, the worry over their son's mental health has been with them constantly for 2 decades.
Kettle on?
And there's no sign of improvement.
I remember him in the house saying that he felt suicidal. He felt terrible. He was very concerned about some terrible thoughts that he was having. And I thought, wow, where does that come from? What's that about? I really didn't know what he was talking about. And that was really the beginning of it. That's when I realised that we've got a big problem here.
I think 93 was a bad year. So you've got this frustration. You can see the frustration in the scribbles. I've crossed it out with a line. I've crossed it out with a squiggle. I've crossed it out with another squiggle. I've gone over it all over again. And then at the end of the day, I've put the big cross on it, so it means if I do go back to thinking, have I checked them all, I'll open the page, well, there's a cross on it, and I can move on. Those are things which haven't been done.
The need to check and recheck means that at 41, Dean cannot even work in his father's business.
We get set times to do a particular job. If we've got an hour and a half to do a service, if he takes 3 hours to do the service, then I can only pay him an hour and a half. Dean will always double the job, so therefore he's only earning half as much for me, the garage, who at the end of the day has to make everything pay, everything meet. and so therefore I wouldn't be able to employ him full time. Not in his present state.
Dean has found ways to cope with his OCD. One is using his skill with metal to create sculptures in his own time, at his own pace.
The sculpting is something that I can say to demonstrate to my kids that I can earn money and contribute to the household. That's the theory. You know, to the kids, I'm actually house husband. My wife's the one working.
Dean's is a familiar story for those who understand OCD.
You know, something, well,
most obsessional behaviours are actually very closely akin to things that everybody does to some degree. So most of us will wash our hands, particularly if we feel a bit contaminated. Most of us will check, particularly if we're going on holiday, for example. It's very common for people to check their passport multiple times, check whether the iron's off, whether the gas is off, and so on. So the seeds of obsessive compulsive disorder lie in normal behaviour. And what happens is it's in some unlucky few people it becomes dominant in their life and takes over.
Professor Paul Sharkovskis is an expert in treating and researching the condition.
For somebody with severe OCD, in essence, the obsessional problem starts even before you've got out of bed. Very often it takes the form of thoughts, which you have to sort of work through. And then at the severe level, really every minute of every day is taken up with it. But it's a continuous torture and torment that people undergo with this.
At home, OCD has to be managed not only by Dean but also by his family. He's been with his wife Renee since the age of 15.
I can remember when we were very young, he was probably about 16, 17. He used to have a hairdryer and he would wind the cord of the hairdryer round and around and around the hairdryer in a way of looking after it, but he would end up breaking the hairdryer after a very short time. And when he had a car, he would check the doors so often that it was locked that he would break the handle, and we just thought he was being too heavy-handed, not realising at the time that he has OCD.
Okey-doke.
Renee has got to know her husband's obsessions. To avoid triggering his anxiety to fever pitch, she never touches Dean's belongings.
Everything's got its place. Everything's got it's organised. You know, everything's got its place. And if somebody messed all that up, I would be very upset, because it does have its order to it.
If I ever have moved or used a pen from his drawer or used something that is his, he knows, and he wants to know why I've touched it, where I've put it, ask before I use it, sort of thing,
Got all my CDs and tapes in order. People aren't to mess with that, and generally people don't. And if somebody wants a CD, then I will get them a CD and hand it to them and write a note in my diary that they have it, and about a week later ask for it back.
Frustrated sometimes because you just sort of want to think, does it matter? So I've moved something or used something. It doesn't matter. So it can be frustrating because sometimes you just think, I just don't want to have to be dealing with this.
I do have to come in here every morning to check that there's no electrical items left on and the windows are closed, and before I leave the house that it's safe. And I have to blinker the rest of it.
I love Dean. He's a great person. And at the end of the day, we deal with things. Everything in life can be a hurdle or an obstacle. We all have different things we have to deal with. This is just one of them. So you just deal with it to get through that day into the next day.
There's their school bags, their homework's in there, and probably the lunch from yesterday. I'm just not going in there. I don't want to know. I can't deal. I'll pick up some paper and I've done my bit in there for the day. I'm out of there.
Checking for Dean doesn't just mean being safe or tidy. It also means checking and rechecking conversations and thoughts.
I have a pattern in my head that I use as a coping mechanism. This is, you know, is there any, I will go through my mind and question, everything's okay with you, Adam, Daniel, Kaylee, if there's any problems. And then the second one will be, right, well, we use a car. Do the same thing then with the house. If I got, well, we got a tap running upstairs, so I can, right, tap running upstairs, that's something I've got to think about today. Right, well, I like to play my guitar, that's there. We haven't got any gigs coming up at the moment, so I haven't got to obsess about practicing. And what will come out of that is, right, well, I've now only got that to worry about.
What if then I come home and I'm saying to you, you know, I don't know, the lights aren't working on the car, or Dean, the tap needs to, when are we going to paint the doors upstairs? You know, all the things I got in my head then, you just start piling stuff up, which is why it's difficult for me then to kind of think, well...
That's what happened.
Right.
Dean is unusual because he can speak openly about his condition. For many sufferers, that's impossible. That's why it's known as the secret illness, a fact that Professor Sharkovskis knows all too well.
There's a really big problem with obsessive-compulsive disorder. People are very reluctant to come forward, so on average it takes people from developing a severe obsessional problem to having it identified about 7 years, and that's 7 lost years of misery, very often at the early part of someone's life.
I think although most of my friends would be understanding, and I don't think they would treat me any different, I just want to keep it separate. I just feel like that, and also I worry that if I get too comfortable, then I'll start doing it in front of them, and then I won't have that relief when I go out with them.
Amy is a 19-year-old student from South Wales. We've agreed to protect her identity as her friends don't know she has the condition. She's suffered since the age of 11, and it affects her mainly at home. Amy deals with her obsessions by chanting random words and phrases.
I have obsessional thoughts, so if I see something I don't like, something bad on the telly, then when I think of that, I have to stop and do my compulsion, which is just like a string of words. It changes every now and again. I don't know how they come about, but they do. They just come about. When they feel right, I have to stop and I have to do them. Sometimes out loud, sometimes in my head, till, you know, just till I feel that I've kind of neutralised the thought. But the thing I worry the most about is that if I don't do that, then something bad is going to happen to maybe somebody I know.
Amy's OCD affects many aspects of her life. Intrusive thoughts can stop her functioning, a state known as getting stuck, many times a day.
I have quite a few issues with clothes. If I haven't worn something, and it can be anything, shoes, clothes, for quite a long time, then I feel like I can't wear them again.